Hey everyone, Daniel here from Twin Bytes with another tech tutorial for you. This time I'm talking about computer purchases and trying to get the correct computer for you. I get asked a lot, what's the best computer? What should I buy? Well, you have to understand what are you using the computer for, and then that will help decide on what's the best thing for you. So in this video I'm going to talk about my checklist on what to think about when purchasing a computer to get the right one for you. I'll have a link in the description below as well for a document that you can print out. So stick around. Okay, so the first thing in the list is talking about a notebook versus a desktop. And I guess even from there, starting at the very beginning, some people are saying, well, what the hell is a notebook or a desktop? Like, the names are interchangeable. So a notebook was called a laptop before, but they changed names really because a laptop gave you the impression that you can have the laptop sitting on your lap. And that's not good because you're blocking the heat vents underneath it, and it can cause overheating, which can cause other problems. So the name is now notebook. But anyway, that's a little history on that. And a desktop, I've heard it called the box or the PC, the brains. There's different names people have called it. But traditionally it was called a desktop because it was a smaller device that would sit on your actual desk, and then your monitor would sit on top of that. Then they changed into towers. So we've got a mix of some styles where you would have a desktop type style that you can sit on your desk, or a tower style that can sit on the floor beside your desk. And then there's some other fancy designs that you can use for different purposes, like media centers and that. So anyway, you want to make sure you know what's the best thing for you. So what I always talk about is that with a notebook or a laptop, they're a lot more prone to being dropped because they're portable, you're carrying them around, and it's more prone to being stolen because, again, they're lightweight, easy to carry, anybody can just grab one and take off. And it's also more prone to overheating because it's got a smaller area to contain the for any cooling fans, so it has to rely on dissipating the heat. And so you might want to use something like a cooling pad underneath the laptop to assist with that, and also making sure you're staying on top of blowing out any dust out of the vents and fan area. With the desktop, it can also overheat. It needs to have the dust blown out of it once in a while, but they don't have the same level of risk with overheating because they have such a wider area for cooling. But anyway, that's one thing, is looking at, do you really need the portability of the laptop, or is it going to be something that's going to just sit in your office or home and it's never going to move, it's always going to stay there, stationary at the same location? Then maybe you want to get a desktop. It's going to be less prone to all these problems I just talked about. But if you want the portability, or need the portability to maybe just work outside, or you need to be able to go between the office and the house, then you're going to need a laptop. But don't just get a laptop because you think that that is the way everyone is going. You need to get what's right for you. So you're going to want to think about that. The next few points that I'm going to talk about now are going to be focused primarily on the notebook, but they can apply to a desktop as well. So the number two thing to think about is the screen size. So usually bigger is better. You can see things better. With the increase in screen resolution, the fonts and everything are getting smaller and almost impossible to see. So you have to zoom in order to read the text on the screen. So with a desktop computer, easy enough. You just buy a big monitor and you're good. You can even hook it up to the TV. But with a laptop or notebook, then the bigger the screen, the bigger the keyboard, the bigger the casing, it becomes heavier and bulkier. You need a bigger bag to carry it in. And if you're carrying it a lot, it's going to become heavier. And you might not think that a pound or two would make a difference, but over time, when you're carrying it a lot, you start to notice the weight the longer you hang on to it. So having a bigger screen on a notebook will mean that it's going to be heavier. So you've got to think about that. The third thing is the fingerprint reader or a webcam. Now, the webcams are pretty important now. We're doing a lot of video conferencing. People are, especially with recent events, more people are relying heavily, because if you can't do an in-person meeting, then you have to do that online using some kind of either Skype or Zoom or any of those kind of products that would allow you to have a face-to-face meeting through the internet using your webcam. So you might want to look at getting a webcam built into your laptop, but if it doesn't have one, whether it's a laptop or a desktop, you can still get a webcam externally and hook that up through a USB port. Fingerprint readers are really good if it's a laptop that you want to have a extra layer of security where it requires a fingerprint. Then you don't need to worry about them guessing a complicated password. You can have something really complex in there that is going to be too hard for even you to remember to type in, but you can have your fingerprint act as the way to log in. The fourth thing to consider is the keyboard. And with a desktop computer, not a big deal. Just walk in the store, pick the keyboard that you want, and you can hook that up to your machine and get exactly what you want. But with the notebooks, it's all in one. So when you choose a notebook computer, then you're gonna have the screen size and the keyboard, mouse, and everything is all one piece. So you don't get to pick and choose. So this is one thing that makes it difficult to pick out a notebook computer, because you need to get something that has everything you want. You can't customize it as easily. Also, you want to watch out that some laptops, they come with French keyboards, and you might not look at the fine print on that and notice it until later. And so some of the keys will be in different spots on the keyboard, and they won't work the same way, and you'll find that to be very frustrating. So you want to make sure that it's a US keyboard, and even if you're in Canada like I am here, it is still considered a US keyboard. So you want the US English, not the French bilingual, unless you really do want a French bilingual keyboard. With the laptop specifically, the keyboard on some of them will have a keypad. So your number pad off to the right, which is great for doing calculations, you're going to notice that the keyboard normally would be center in front of your screen, but when you have the number pad, it shifts it over a little bit. So it's not going to be perfectly center, and I've had some people comment on that they notice that it's off center and it's a little bit annoying and takes some time to get used to, but at the same time they want to have the number pad. So that's something that you got to deal with, unless when you're sitting at a desk and you can use a external keyboard, then you can do that, and that would help for the times where you can plug in an external keyboard. The fifth thing to think about is the mouse. And with a notebook or laptop computer, there's different type of built-in mice. So you've got a track point, which is a little dot that would sit in the middle of the screen, which was typical on the IBM computers. And you've got the touchpad, which is located just below the keyboard. So what I've found some people had issues with was when you're typing on the keyboard and the palm of your hand accidentally touches the touchpad and would move the mouse on them, and it's jumping on them. So you could buy a USB mouse and plug that in, and that problem's resolved. Now with a CD or a DVD, Blu-ray, it's changed over time, and now the lighter laptops, like typically the ones that are 14-inch or less, they don't have any CD or DVD drive. So you wouldn't have the ability to put in a disc at all. And they do require the laptop to be thicker so that it can fit in that disc drive. So of course it increases the weight of it. So especially with the smaller ones, they're not going to have that in there. And so that's something you might want to look at. And if you really need to get the Blu-ray, it's not very common at all, and it does cost a lot more to get. But typically Blu-ray was for videos, but it does allow you to store a whole lot more data. But since everything's in the cloud now and online, and the computers have tons of storage, you can have a USB drive with you, or a small little USB stick you can fit in your pocket to store things. You don't really need to have the Blu-ray on the computer. So I've never heard anybody needing that unless they're burning discs and need to have that level of storage. Then you would want to make sure that it comes with a Blu-ray. Otherwise, CD, DVD is standard if it comes with a disk drive of some sort. Now the seventh thing on the list here is a custom-built desktop versus a store-bought brand name. And there's a lot of flexibility when doing a custom-built, and I know a lot of gamers that will build their own, so they're getting all the best components and brands of each component and putting it together and making their own computer. And now this is with the desktop, not with the laptop, because laptops you can't really custom build. It's you buy the brand, and some of them are built to order, so you can do some customizing to the point of saying that how much memory do you want to have, or what size hard drive, so they can increase that for you before it's delivered to you. So that's one option. Otherwise, to really narrow it down to what type of video card do you have, especially for graphics gaming and the type of keyboard, mouse, all this kind of stuff. Desktops are, because each component you buy each one individually and put it together, you can do anything you want. So there's the warranties with that. You get the warranty for each individual component of the computer that you would go through each individual vendor for the warranty on that part. So you would have to do your own troubleshooting and figuring that out if you wanted to deal with that. With the brand name computer, it's one warranty for the whole thing. Doesn't matter what goes wrong with it. You go to that vendor and they'll take care of it for you regardless of which component has the issue. So doing a custom build will give you more options and flexibility for what exactly you get, and it's really can work out to be cheaper to get the more powerful machine that you're looking for versus paying so much for a brand name that you want to have certain minimum requirements, but you'd have to pay so much more money to hit those certain minimum requirements. Then you've got all this other stuff that may be overkill for you that you don't need, just because that's what you had to do in order to get your other minimum requirements met. So in a case like that, maybe you might want to look at a custom build computer. Otherwise, store-bought brand name that's already done for you, it's just a whole lot more convenient. Now the type of processor that you get depends on what you're doing. A lot of this we would base it on Intel. You can get an AMD processor, but to try and compare those and find out what you need, a lot of people talk about Intel. And now with Intel, as of the making of this video, we had the Intel i3, i5, and i7 series. And this is going back 10 generations now. So it hasn't changed in almost 10 years. So you're getting the same type of clock speed options and that sort of thing. So it's just newer generation of the same thing with slight improvements. So basically the i3 is the basic cheapest processor that will still work pretty well, especially if you have the clock speed on the higher side, like for example a 3 gigahertz as opposed to a 1.5. But the i7 at the top end is more for gamers doing graphic design, programmers, video editors, and that type of thing that requires very high processing power. The i5 is right in the middle, and really the i5 is a nice step up from the i3, so it gets close to the i7, but it's not quite as fast having those abilities as the i7 does, but it does give you just enough that if it's for standard use but you want more speed, then the i5 would be perfect for you. But unless you're a serious gamer or doing anything that requires high calculations like a programmer, then you wouldn't really see the benefit of having an i7. So you might as well save that extra money, stick with the i5, and just load it up with extra memory, which is the next thing. Number 9 on the list is memory, and 8 gigs has been a standard for a while now. It's jumped up over time, but 8 currently is still, enough to do most basic things. You're surfing the web, checking your email, and basic business practice, and any standard use is fine. But if you're more of a power user and you have tons of stuff open all the time and you have it open all day long, then it chews up more memory throughout the day, and that will start to slow you down. The good news is that you can at least add more memory later at some point, but when you purchase a computer, you want to make sure what's the maximum memory that you can put in. So if you're really thinking you want to have a lot more than 8, 16 would be great, but I had somebody that was already capped out at 32 gigs of RAM on a gamer laptop that they wanted more RAM because sometimes they're doing video editing that chews up more. It's just not capable of taking any more than 32 gigs of RAM in that particular laptop, and they wanted more. So we couldn't do anything in that case other than just give them a bigger solid state drive that was in there, and it can make use of that as a big chunk of memory. That's the next part here. Number 10, a hard drive. Typically a terabyte is standard size now for everybody, but you can still get some smaller ones. The drives usually will put in a solid state drive for our customers, and because the prices come down quite a bit over the years now, and the speed difference is dramatic. From just turning on the computer, it's like instant on, and doing updates and other things, you've got stuff happening in the background while you're working. With a solid state drive, it can work a lot faster. Also, knowing that the hard drive is the biggest bottleneck in a computer, you want to get a solid state drive if you can justify that extra cost. If it's a small drive, you're really not going to notice any difference in price at all. But as it gets up closer to the terabyte and 2 terabyte, that's where you're going to really notice a bit of a difference in price, and you're going to be spending that extra $100 or $200. But if you need the capacity and you want to have the speed, then it's totally worth it for the long-term investment of having a computer with a lot of capacity and just great speed. Also, with the solid state drives, they do have a less chance of failure because they have no mechanical parts, but they do have a wear and tear shelf life that I haven't seen proven really yet exactly how long it can go, but typically you'd have some other issue before that goes on you. So the benefits of the solid state drive with the extra costs, I would still always recommend going for a solid state drive whenever you can justify doing that. Number 11, I have an internal card reader, and with a lot of laptops they'll have an internal card reader, so from your phone If you have a card in there storing pictures to have that extra bit of storage, or if you have a professional camera that you're taking pictures on, you want to take the camera card out of there, you can put it into the computer and read that properly. You can normally, even on your phones, just get your USB cable that you use for charging and plug it into your computer, and you can read the pictures straight off of there without having to remove the card. But if you want that ability to take the card out and put it into the computer, you want to make sure that your computer, whether it's a laptop or a desktop style, they have a camera card reader on there. If you don't get one or can't get one with that, there are options to get external USB card readers. So you can just plug it into a USB port on the computer and you'd still be able to read your SD cards. Now, the video card, especially if you're a gamer or a graphics designer, you want to make sure you've got a really good graphics card. But with the laptops, again, everything's all built in. You don't have the choice. So you're going to have to pay the money. If you want it to be a notebook laptop and it's got to have a really good graphics card, then you're going to spend a lot of money to make sure that it's got a good enough graphics card in there, because you can't change that. If it's a desktop computer, that's no big deal. You can just spend all your money on the video card, and this is where a custom build desktop, of course, or tower, you can really customize and decide where you want to spend all the money on. So if it's all got to go into the video card, that's where all the money is. If you look at the prices, you could spend as much money on a video card alone as what some people spend on the entire computer. So it's up to you how important the video card is. Also looking at what ports are available on that video card. If you're on a laptop and you want to plug it into an external monitor, or if it's a desktop computer and the type of monitor you want to use, does it have VGA, DVI, or HDMI? You want to make sure that the port on the device matches what ports are available on your monitor. So of course VGA is the old type, DVI is better, HDMI is the newest one, and it gives you the best, crispest, most crisp picture that you can get. Number 13 on the list is wireless. So everything's wireless now. Of course, if it's a laptop, notebook type computer, it's going to have wireless built in. It just has to. And with the desktop computer, don't assume they have wireless built in, because almost every single time they don't. It's going to require a network card. So you're going to need a network, or it's going to require a network cable because it has only a network card in there. But you could add a wireless card, or just get one of those little USB type wireless adapters and plug it in easily after the fact. It's a very easy, quick fix that you can do yourself. USB ports, because everything's on USB, number 14 is considering how many USB ports do you need. So you might want to look at how many are on that laptop, because there isn't very many on a laptop. You can get a USB hub later, so you just plug that into one of the USB ports and you can expand that to a lot of extra ports depending on which type you get. One of the options is looking at the speed of it. So USB 2.0 is still standard for things like keyboard and mouse, but there is USB 3.0, which you can tell the difference usually by the color. And some of them, they're usually white or black port for the 2.0. Blue is the 3.0, and then 3.1 I've seen done in yellow, which is the latest, fastest USB port. And those 3.0 and 3.1 are good for external hard drive where you're doing backups and you want to have it back up faster. Now, at number 15, I had Firewire ports, and this is ancient and extinct pretty much. I haven't even seen any for the longest time. They were good for video cameras that were not making use of the new USB 3.0, and so they were the fastest way of transferring data. Floppy drives at number 16 is also extinct, but it's amazing how long it took to phase them out completely. I've had some people come to me asking about that, and so we had to get a USB external floppy drive because we weren't even able to really buy internal floppy drives anymore even. At number 17 we had parallel ports, and this is another ancient thing that you should not be using this. You should be on a USB if anything, but there's some old printers that some people are still using that they require for some special purposes that require a parallel port. So you're going to want to look at that and see if you can get a parallel port on your computer. They won't come with it. It's going to be a separate add-on thing. That would only apply to a desktop type computer as well, not a laptop. But you can convert some of these from parallel to USB, but it may give you problems. So hopefully you're not relying on any printers that do require a parallel port, but there are ways around that as well. But if possible, I would recommend replace that printer and get something that runs on the network or off a USB port. COM ports are also very ancient and rarely used, but for special purposes. Looking at the difference now at number 19 between new and used, well, because like I said before, so many of the computers have changed very little in the last 10 years. Looking at the processors, we're up to 10th generation of the exact same processor with the exact same clock speeds, just some other small differences in how it does some things in the background. There is so many new ways of measuring and determining the difference in the processors now, where before it used to be just the clock speed and then they had dual core, quad core, all that stuff. Anyway, because it hasn't changed that much, you could get a used computer that's a few years old and save a ton of money on it, and it would still be a really good fast computer and save you a lot of money. The difference would be maybe a 2-month warranty on a used computer versus a 1-year warranty, which is standard on a new computer. So with that, I've sold so many used computers secondhand in the last number of years than I've probably ever sold new computers. It's just because the price is so much cheaper, it makes it an easier decision for people to buy, especially businesses that are starting out and need to buy a bunch of computers to start their business off and don't want to spend a lot of money on new stuff. You can get used ones and get up and running real quick. And if the computer lasts you a month, it's probably going to last you over a year, which is what the new warranty would have been on the new computer anyway. Finally, at number 20 is the weight of the computer, which applies to the laptop. With a desktop, the weight doesn't matter. You have it sitting there, it doesn't move. But with a laptop, having to carry it around, you might want to consider the weight if that's really important to you. So having the thinner laptop will mean it's lighter, and a smaller screen will also make it lighter, but you're sacrificing having a smaller screen. Also, you're not going to have the CD DVD drive, and you're probably not going to have as many USB ports or any other ports of any kind. It's just going to be so compact that you may be missing out on some other features that I went through in this list. So going through this list, if you find out what's important to you, you're going to need to pick the laptop that has all those components. And if it turns out that it's just not going to be as lightweight as the ones that you're looking for, then you got to decide on what's more important to you, the weight of it and sacrifice the other devices, ports, or the other. So that's the whole list on the components. There is a software component to this as well. So there's 3 main parts to this that I had. The first is listing all the software programs that you use and the version numbers that you have on there. Are they compatible with the newer operating system that you're going to be getting with the new computer? You may need to upgrade some software, so there's going to be some added expense there as well. Your printer also may not be compatible. You'd have to go on the manufacturer's website, look that up, and find out, do they have a driver for that new operating system. If you want to have your technician to help you out and you want to provide them a list of what you got, Belarc Advisor has a free software program that can run. It doesn't give you a great level of detail, but it's a lot of detail that your technician would love you for if you ran that and sent the list to them. Then say, here, I need this new computer. Will this be compatible? Number 2 is when you're choosing the system, 64-bit versus 32-bit. 64-bit has become the standard now. It's faster and it is standard, but there's some old programs still that a couple of computers were still requiring it to run on a 32-bit. So just to know that that does exist, especially if you're a technician trying to help somebody else out and you have to reinstall Windows for them, make sure if they need the 32-bit, you've got to install the correct version. Don't put 64 and then you find out that it's not compatible with the software they're running. Then you gotta redo the entire process all over again, reinstalling all the programs and configuring everything. Also with the 32-bit, you're limited to only 3 gigs of RAM, so there's no way you would be able to add or take advantage of any additional RAM that you might add into the computer. So that's why the 64-bit has become standard now. Finally, looking at when the software or operating systems are expiring, Windows 7 already expired January 14th of 2020 this year. Windows 8 extended support will be expiring January 10th of 2023. Windows 10, there's claims that it will never expire. It's Windows as a service, so there is no talk of Windows 11 or anything else. It's just going to go on forever with continuous upgrades, and they don't make money off of selling you a new operating system. They make money when you have to purchase a new computer. You get a license that comes with that, so they're selling the licenses to the manufacturers of the hardware, and then you just get that included. So it's really software as a service. That's it for the whole list here, and I will have the link below as well where you can download this and print it out so you can go through the list and then call your technician and go through that list with them and tell them what's important to you so they can help you to decide on what's the best computer for you. Thanks so much for watching and sticking around to the end. If you're still here, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned for the next video. All right, thanks so much. Bye for now.